So I will go ahead and start with the roll, and hopefully Kathy can get in here in just a minute. Mr. Kiefer. Looks like Mr. Kiefer, you there?
Yep, I'm just got on.
Perfect. Mr. Mitchell. Do not see him in yet. Oh, there's Kathy. Mr. Perry.
Present.
Mr. Stengel.
Here.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Mr. Hintz. Mr. Koulibaly.
Aye.
Miss Davy.
Here.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
Miss Prop. I see Kathy is in. Can you hear us, Kathy? Right now you're muted. You got to unmute yourself.
How about that?
Perfect. And Mr. Mitchell, did I see Mr. Mitchell is here now?
Here. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, 9 present.
Thank you, Mark, for starting the meeting. We have the minutes of October 21. What's your pleasure? Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Just for the record, who made the motion? Sorry, I couldn't catch who it was.
Margie.
And who was the second?
John Kafer.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is public hearing for conditional use permit.
Kathy, you got yourself muted right now. You got to make sure you hold down the space or unmute yourself.
I am unmuted. How's that work?
Perfect. You're good to
Can
go.
you hear me? Okay.
Yep, we can hear you now. So were there any site inspections? Please raise your hand if there was a site inspection. Does not look like it. Okay, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, then Chair will accept the staff report as part of the record. And staff, go ahead.
Thank you. So the subject site is located on County Road Y, west of Jackson Street. It is county-owned property with county facilities surrounding the site. So here's kind of an aerial view of the subject site. In December of 2018, a conditional use permit was approved to establish an institutional residential facility for a county resident convicted of a sexual offense per Wisconsin State Statute 980 and deemed ready for release. That CUP from 2018 included a condition that there'd be a maximum of 1 occupant and maximum of 2 bedrooms. Then in 2019, a 2-bedroom manufactured home was installed on the site, and that currently houses 1 resident. The county is now requesting a conditional use permit amendment to allow a second resident in that home. Again, it's a 2-bedroom home, so this would be a second resident for that home. The county is not proposing any changes to the site. It's the original plan for the site, which was constructed. So staff reviewed this, and staff feels that it's an appropriate location still based on the surrounding county government land uses. And again, with no changes to the site, staff did not see any concerns. However, we are recommending condition that it be limited to 2 occupants at this site. So staff recommends approval of the proposed conditional use permit amendment for an institutional residential land use with a second occupant, with the condition that the residence is limited to a maximum of 2 occupants.
And just to add a little bit onto what Brian said, if some of you were members back in 2018 when this forward, Planning Commission had a concern about wanting to see what the impact was and therefore limit it to a single individual. We are aware of no issues whatsoever related to this facility. Staff is still in the opinion it's in a great location, close proximity to the Sheriff's Department for the monitoring that they do of the site. And we really feel, again, it's a great location. 2-unit manufactured home makes sense to allow the 2 individuals. And I know the applicant is here to add some information.
Okay, are there technical questions? Raise your hand if you. I don't see any technical questions. All right, we'll open the public hearing.
Looks like Mr. Perry has a question.
Oh, all right, Mr. Perry?
So go ahead and unmute yourself, Tom.
Yes, is the applicant the provider or the county?
The applicant is the county.
Any other questions from the Plan Commission? Okay, is the applicant present to make a statement?
Yeah, so Mary Ann, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and give some comments.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Great. Thank you for your time and your consideration. As your staff indicated, we were here a couple of years ago, given the state statute and the legislature basically putting the onus on the county to find housing for 980 sex offenders. There are a number of requirements that need to be met. And this location, which actually was on county-owned land, we thought was the best situation given the fact that it was in the shadow of the sheriff's office and it was not near residential housing. And as your staff indicated, there are 2 bedrooms there. We are only asking to basically use the other bedroom because right now there is 1 resident in that manufactured home. We believe the people who are in that home are strictly monitored. There's not comings and goings. 980s, as some of you may know, are deemed serious sex offenders. So they are not allowed to leave the premises during the first year without a parole officer. So their monitorings or their comings and going are strictly monitored. And again, we are basically trying to react to what the state has done with their legislation. And that's why we are coming to you because, again, we believe there's not going to be any impact. And we would also be able to satisfy the law. Thank you.
Are there any other people wishing to speak to the public hearing?
I don't know if, Tom, do you have another question? If not, can you click the lower hand thing? I just want to make sure if you have another question or not.
I do have another question for the applicant, but I can wait until other people speak.
You're still muted, Kathy. You got to unmute yourself.
Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak from the public? Okay, I don't see any, and I can't see everybody on my participant list, so I'm sorry. Tom, you fall off my list.
When he raises his hand, it'll automatically go to the top, Kathy. So as long as you
all right.
top, you'll be able to see.
All right, thank you. Well, then I guess, Tom.
Okay, I had concerns about this 2 years ago, and I still have concerns now. Having had significant experience running facilities like this, my main concern is with the contractor that is contracting with the county to do so. And in this time, especially now with the pandemic and everything going on, organizations that run these types of operations have a very challenging time finding the staff to run and to staff these facilities. Are there significant safeguards in place, like direct wiring to the sheriff's department or panic buttons, those types of things on the staff? Because it really staff calling in sick and leaving a single person on site, it is a recipe for disaster with 2 people in there unless it's sufficiently staffed.
That's a question for the applicant, is it not? Mary Ann?
That is correct.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, this mobile home is owned by the county. We do not have anyone managing it. It is the county that owns the home. And in terms of staff residing in this 2-bedroom mobile home, there is no staff residing in it other than these 2 occupants. But I will tell you that they have electronic monitoring through the Department of Human Services. The sheriff is, as I said, basically there passing by throughout the day. And my understanding is that there has been one offender placed there. There have been no issues in regard to that. So yes, in response to your questions, we own the facility. We're the one that runs it. But in terms of electronic monitoring, it is the state who manages all of that, and they have direct links into all of the neighboring, to the sheriff's office and all of the neighboring institutions that would be providing coverage for this. And more telling is the fact that since we already have one occupant in there, we have had no issues.
Okay, anybody else wishing to speak to this public hearing?
It looks like Tom has a follow-up question.
Okay. Go ahead,
Thank
Tom.
Thank you for your information. When we were approached 2 years ago, the county clearly said that they were going to be contracting with a provider to do the monitoring and potential staffing. And so this is a little different information that you're giving to us. And so just something that I wanted to point out.
Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing, I think, because I don't know that there's anyone else wishing to speak. Commission, would you make a motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report?
This is Ford. I move to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, I'm not sure who seconded it, but is there discussion on the motion? Excuse me.
I have Margie as the second, and then it looks like Mr. Perry would like to speak again.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
My hand is still raised from the last time I didn't lower it. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? I don't see any hands. Then let's call the roll.
Mr. Kiefer,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Stengel,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Kulabali,
Aye.
Miss Davy,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Miss Prop.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, item 2 is a public hearing on a conditional use permit for a residential group development located in the 2600 block of Whitsell Avenue. And were there any site inspections? Okay, it looks like,
Oh, looks like Margie, Miss Davies, and that Mr. Mitchell as well. Anyone else?
No. All right, the chair will accept staff report as part of the record. Staff, go ahead.
Thank you. So item 2 is a conditional use permit request for a group development at the 2600 block of Whitsell. It's the WIT development, and it consists of 12 multifamily structures. Just want to make a note right off the bat that the reason this item is coming to us is because it is a group development under the zoning ordinance. And our performance standards stipulate that these types of developments of 3 or more buildings have to come through for a conditional use permit. That's the sole reason why it's coming to us. And so just want to keep that in mind, that any of our conditions and approval need to be based on the consistency with the applicable ordinances and with the comprehensive plan land use recommendation for the site. With that said, we can get into the property location. You can see it up on the slide there. I see it outlined in blue there. It was formerly owned by Mercy Medical Center, and I think it was planned for expansion at the time. That never materialized, and so as you may recall, the applicant came through several months back and got a zone change and a comprehensive plan amendment to allow multifamily on site. So you can see around the subject site a number of multifamily developments, both to the north and to the east. You can also see Mercy Medical Center to the south, and then just to the west, the immediate west of the site is Town of Algoma and a number of single-family properties there. Back originally when this development came through, we did hold with the applicant. They had a neighborhood meeting to make sure, that they got some input from the property owners surrounding this site, and to make sure that they were aware of any concerns that came up and to address those. So as I mentioned, currently the site, you can see the kind of a mix of development around it. Here's an aerial of the site, just looking at it a little bit more closely. You can see some higher density development, again, to the east, and then the lower density single family to the west. So petitioner now seeks to move forward. As I mentioned, they gotten the comprehensive plan amendment. They had the zone change from single family to MR12. And so now they are looking to develop the site with 12 multifamily buildings all arranged around a central retention pond and some amenities and community space, a clubhouse, a pool, and like a dog park. There's kind of a mix of different amenities on this site. The dwelling unit density, just want to note that it is actually less than some of the surrounding multifamily development. This proposed development equates to 7.78 units per acre. So that is in line and actually less than what the MR12 district allows. This is a little bit hard to see, but they did submit a landscaping plan. You can see it up there on the right. They submitted the landscaping information. I believe that they are, from what we could tell, they were consistent with the ordinance requirements. And again, this is not a planned development. It is just a conditional use permit. So they need to meet the basic code standards. Before I forget, I just want to mention one thing that you can see on here. Their access to the site would come off of Whitsell. So there's 2 access drives going into the site. And then that's what would allow them access. And you can see most of these buildings, you'll see later some elevation or perspectives, I should say. Most of these have garage parking and enclosed parking for the residents, but then access to each building from those 2 main circulation drives through the site. They're proposing some community gardens to the very southern end of the site. So just another amenity they're thinking of, or they're planning to put in. They are, from a parking standpoint, short by a few spaces, so they are going to have to work with staff. We are going to have to work with them to make sure that their parking count is in compliance with the minimum code requirements. This here is the photometric plan. Again, a little bit hard to see, just with the larger scale sites, it's hard to compress these onto a single slide. This was compliant. There were some deficiencies though, notably between most of the buildings. The lighting levels just were not at the code standard. So they were a little bit low in certain areas. I think we tried to highlight that in your staff report. We are going to need some more information on light fixtures and have this plan modified to meet lighting standards. Signage, there is a freestanding monument sign proposed. I don't think I have an image of it, but just want to note that it would meet the setback and the sign area standards. And then getting into the buildings themselves, you can see these are renderings of what these multifamily buildings would look like. I believe that the massing for all of these is pretty much the same. There might be some material variations and color variations, but they are replicating these buildings on the site. And I believe they are all two bedroom, I should say, units. All 2-story in height, so not very large scale. And then you can see the central pool and clubhouse there that is proposed as an amenity for the site at the center of the site. So pretty substantial. So that's another thing to be aware of here. And then lastly, with stormwater management, they do, as we mentioned, have a large retention pond proposed, and we put that in the staff report. They have submitted plans. Since there is going to be a significant amount of impervious surface added to the site, the Department of Public Works is requiring a full site plan review and approval. So with that said, staff is supportive of this concept, and again, it is consistent with the multifamily zoning and the 2040 land use recommendation for that site. So it is consistent and it is compatible with the surrounding development. And for the most part, as it stands, compliant with the existing zoning ordinance. Just, a few minor tweaks are required. But again, we're here just to review the land use aspect and the fact that this is 3 or more buildings. It's a group development. That's why it's coming before us. So with that, we recommend approval of this conditional use permit with the findings and conditions listed in your staff report. One thing just wanted to note is that they are going to have to submit code compliant fencing details. They do have to have a buffer along the west property line because there is single family already there on the west, as I mentioned. So we are going to require fencing details, solid fencing, as part of that 0.2 buffer up along that west property line during the site plan review process. Again, they're going to have to submit a revised landscaping plan and schedule. Their point totals, I think, were compliant, but I do believe they have a few potentially prohibited species and used sparingly species that need to be looked at. A code compliant photometric plan, light fixture information, mounting and heights, all that have to be submitted. And then we are going to require detached garage elevations and dumpster enclosure elevations as part of the site plan review process.
Yeah, so just a couple additional comments, kind of as Stephen mentioned. They need to meet all MR12 base zoning requirements, as this is not a plan development. The CUP today is specifically related to the group development, meaning more than 3 buildings on a single parcel, and whether it makes sense to allow this as a group development with 3 or more structures.
Are there technical questions to the staff? Once again, I'm not seeing any hands. Is there anyone that?
You got yourself muted yet, Kathy?
Okay. I thought I wasn't. We'll open the public hearing. Now, is there the applicant here to make a statement?
Yep, the applicant is here. So Mr. Moorhead, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Sure. Hello. Thank you everybody for having us involved here tonight. And we're here to answer any questions. We appreciate your help and support on this behalf.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing the applicant. Is he making a statement?
The applicant just said they're here to answer any questions and look for Plan Commission support. Looks like Mr. Perry has a question.
Go ahead, Tom.
Just once again, as another large development, I'm hoping the developer takes into consideration accessibility needs for the city and designs a few of the units to address that.
Sure. And yes, we have taken that into consideration. It will be designed, of course, following the 88 requirements. The architects are here. They can go through it further with you if needed, but it will be designed per 88 requirements.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Well, evidently not. I don't.
It looks like Mr. Mitchell has questions.
Okay.
Greetings, Justin Mitchell here. Thank you for taking time to answer some questions prior. You know, and I understand the clarification or the information that the city provided about what we're specifically voting on. You know, part of this role here is reviewing the project, but also reviewing, I guess, the city's process as well. So, you know, the project that you propose looks great, and I'm really excited for that particular plot to be developed. And as you're likely aware, the city has identified higher quality housing as a gap as well. And so these questions are less in line of, you know, for any sort of like approval base or anything like that, but more so just looking at the role and function of the city and getting a better idea of how a project goes about either including or not including accessibility features. So if I can just follow up a couple of clarification questions. When you indicated that there's 33% of the building is on first floor, is that, are you suggesting that that's a no step entry? Or did you believe that there are step entries for all of the units?
That is a no step entry.
Great. And then on those first floor units, then those that have the bedroom and the full bathroom on the first floor, those are in fact the 0 step entry first floor units.
Correct.
Wonderful. Thank you. Just wanted to see if there were any other items. When I asked if you had any other accessibility features, and you wrote accessibility features required by code, I guess I was just curious if there were other intentional features that you put in to accommodate the needs of individuals that may have disabilities, whether it be, you know, we often think of individuals in wheelchairs, but there also are folks with, you know, visual and hearing impairments as well. And I was just curious if you had any specific items that maybe you did.
At this time, it's all by code. Once we get into it and build the first building and we learn through the process, we will take all those things in account for sure. We're doing this in stages. So, you know, all I can say is by code. We want to, of course, make the project accessible to someone that has a handicap as best as we can.
Great. I'm about 3/4 of the way done, Kathy. You indicated that the specific city staff worked with you specifically about incorporating accessibility features into your project. So not just about providing guidance on what code requires or on land use, but specific to incorporating accessibility features. Is it, that is correct that you're saying that staff did that, and can you explain?
Well, we didn't talk to staff specifically around ADA requirements. However, you know, the staff has been very open and worked with us extremely well in answering our questions, since this is a new project within the city of Oshkosh for us. So the answer to your question is no.
Were you provided with specific information encouraging you to say incorporate accessibility features, or here's some best practice ideas on how you could make units more accessible, where you provided any sort of like financial incentive packages or anything related to encouraging you to incorporate accessibility features.
Well, that really falls within the Carroll's architectural group, and they have put in their judgment as far as the best design features and things of that nature, going to extra wide hallways, wider than standard doors. You know, the bathroom is all ADA acceptable. Even in those upstairs, I believe, are still larger than your typical bathroom. And they could probably answer that for you better.
I think that sums it up really well. We put our best means and methods forward every time, and no, we don't look to the city for that type of recommendation. That's not, in our mind, their job.
I can say from the staff side, after last meeting, we did reach out to them to ask if they would like to have any additional conversations about accessibility options in city programs.
Great, thank you.
Are you okay? Looks like Justin raised.
All good, Kathy.
So it looks like back to you, Kathy.
Okay. Then is there anyone else wishing to, any member of the public wishing to speak to this item?
It looks like we have one individual who is in on a phone. I don't know what item they're here. Could the individual on the phone, is there anything, were you here for this item, the previous item? Right now it looks like they're muted. I'm unable to unmute them.
Okay. Well, if there is no additional public.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm concerned about the drainage of this, so it don't back up on my land, my property here.
Could you identify yourself with your name, address, please?
James Robbie, 176 Barton Road, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 54904.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm concerned about the water backup when they're digging this and doing the drainage from all the water that comes down Barton Road. That water gets pretty high running through here, that it doesn't back up on my property.
Mark, is there someone there that can answer that question?
Yeah, so they will have to meet full city drainage requirements. I know Justin's here. I don't know how much they've reviewed the drainage plan for this project yet. But similar to any other commercial style development, they must retain and hold all water on their own site. They cannot drain the development property onto a neighbor. They have to collect and convey all their own water into the correct storm sewer systems. They will have to have final drainage plans approved by the city prior to construction taking place.
Because there's a lot of water that comes through here. It comes through 1.5 feet or more deep when we get heavier rains, and it all is supposed to go through that field, but now it's probably be backed up.
For the DNR.
Is that true during construction as well, Mark? That the property must retain its own water?
I don't want to speak for DPW on the exact requirements of the ordinance, but yes, even during construction, they have to have drainage measures in place and silt fencing for runoff and stuff like that. I know Justin can probably give a more eloquent answer.
Yeah, this is Justin from engineering. So during construction, they need to maintain the water that's on their site, and if there's water that flows through that, they need to find a way to deal with that. I don't have any of the construction plans in front of me, and there's been nothing approved to this point. But post-construction, they're required to maintain drainage, whether it's through the site or around the site, and then anything on site does need to is required to drain to the right of way, waters of the state, or any obtained easements.
And what happened last time it rained?
Well, the last time it rained, they put that silk fence up, and I had to cut a hole in it to get the water to drain through from Barton Road because it was backing up. Which the guy that put it in mentioned that we may have to cut a hole in it, but he wouldn't. So the water was backing up, and I did cut a hole, but it still backed up some.
We'll have to take a closer look at how the water drains through Barton Road then, to ensure that the site is able to safely convey the water through the subject site.
Yeah,
I'll make sure I can check that everything runs smooth.
if we could also get that address too, again, one more time, just so we're aware of it, so we can correct it on our end.
176 Barton Road.
Your name again, I'm sorry?
James Robbie. Because all of the water that comes all the way from Whitsell all the way down Barton Road on both sides, all runs through here and was running through that field, and that's what backs up.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely make sure Racky is aware of it, and we'll keep a very close eye on it.
I hope so.
You can contact if there's a problem.
Who do I contact if there's a problem?
Myself, Steve Moorhead.
Steve Moorhead.
My cell phone is 920.
920
279
279
1769.
176 what?
9.
1769.
That's it. Thank you, James.
All right, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you for the comment. Don't be afraid to contact the city as well.
Yeah, once construction starts, if there's issues, you can also contact both planning and public works, that we can take a look. Until the public works approves the drainage plans, nothing can really take place out there until they've had a chance to review and approve them.
Okay.
Okay, is there anybody else from the public wishing to speak to this? Do you see anyone, Mark?
Looks like Mr. Whitsell has another question.
Well, that's not the public.
I was going to ask just for a point of clarification on what this last gentleman was saying, if that's possible.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Kathy. Justin. So just so I understand, this is a concern of water flowing from somebody else's property from around Barton Road onto the project that's being proposed onto that site. It's not the other way around. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's how I understand it right now. The applicant is still required to maintain drainage that is coming through the site. They can't block it off to flood out neighboring properties. So they can't drain from their subject site on the neighboring properties. And if there truly is water flowing through the site, they will have to maintain that as well. So we will look at that with them and how that affects their site.
Okay, any other public comment?
Does not appear we have anyone else from the public in the meeting.
All right, thank you. Then I will close the public hearing. Does the applicant have any other statement he wishes to make?
No, thank you. Other than thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Commission, we need a motion.
Make a motion to adopt the recommendations and findings.
I'll second.
Discussion on the motion.
Just to make sure, that was Mr. Kiefer with the second?
Yes.
Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. I'm having trouble seeing hands raised on my screen.
I do not. Oh, looks like Mr. Mitchell.
I just wanted to add one more idea or note to this is, I know there's a number of apartments directly by this, so there may already be some sort of good integration of affordable housing. I just want to be clear on when we talk about incorporating affordable housing, so we don't have islands of say well-to-do and islands of not well-to-do. Because we might be talking about somebody who works for the school district as the receptionist or working with one-on-one with your kids and makes $25,000 a year as a single parent. That person may benefit equally well from such a luxury development or some of the amenities. And there are different strategies that can be incorporated. It may not be appropriate necessarily for this project, so I didn't want to make a big deal of it. But I did want to note that I'm excited to see the housing study to see if there are actual plans in place then to make sure that we don't continue to have this segregation of wealth without incorporation of our working class, lesser well-off folks. So.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Any plan commissioners? Okay, I don't see any. Are there any, Mark?
I don't see any either.
All right, then we'll call the roll.
Mr. Kiefer?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Stengel?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Koulibaly?
Aye.
Miss Davy?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Aye.
Miss Prop? Kathy, you're muted. Miss Prop? Still muted, Kathy. There you go.
Says aye. All right. Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Is there any other business before the commission?
That is it.
Okay, motion for adjournment in order.
So moved. Marshall, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you all for putting up with me on this. I appreciate it.
You did a good
Yeah,
job,
thank you,
Kathy.
everyone. It's a little more interesting being all virtual, but appreciate everyone's cooperation, and we'll keep working through these. Have a good evening, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
You too.